Hello everyone, my name is SwingPoynt and welcome to the official Pokemon Unite guide posted on the official Pokemon.com website. They were serious about this. Take a look, Pokemon.com. A minute-by-minute guide to the Pokemon Unite battles. Plan your strategy with this breakdown of when to attack Dreadnought and Rotom and when to battle Zapdos and more. And I skimmed through this and there's a lot of good information in this. So what we're going to do is we're going to read through it and I'm going to provide supplementary videos so you can actually see what they're talking about in the guide here. And then I'll also give you guys my experience and my opinions on what the guide says to help you get the most out of your Pokemon Unite battles. This might help catch you guys up a lot very quickly. All right? And I'll put the link in the description if you want to read it yourself. So, let's get started here. I can't believe they made this. I'm very shocked. Pokemon Unite's standard and ranked Unite battles play out with a strict 10-minute time limit. If you want to be an effective member of your team, you should know exactly what happens during that period and how to make the most of your time. To help formulate your battle strategy, we put together this minute-by-minute breakdown of a typical match, and they're not kidding. Literally, minute by minute of what to do. They went really in-depth with this, and I'm so happy about it. So, before diving in, it's important to be aware of the three sections of the map. There's the top path, or the top lane, the central area, also known as the jungle, and then the bottom path, also known as the bottom lane. Typically, it's best to choose a section and stick with it early in the match. When you're in the pre-battle screen before a match begins, take a moment to tell your teammates which map section you plan to cover. You can do this by choosing battle prep and then selecting the set path option. Selecting your path in this manner will alert your teammates of your decision, but you can also choose the quick chat function to let your teammates know which section you want. If you're unsure which section of the map is best for you to take, the game will recommend one for you based off of the Pokemon you selected. Generally, 2 Pokemon go to the top and bottom paths, while just 1 Pokemon heads to the central area. So let me add a little bit to that. So the center area, aka the jungle, is typically taken by the Pokemon with a blue background, the speedsters. And those include Zeraora, Absol, Gengar, and Talonflame. Now, there's other Pokemon that are good at going in the center. I would say Pokemon like Cinderace or Garchomp or even Gardevoir. Pokemon that scale really well at the end of the game. They're called late game carries. They do disproportionately well at the end and they kind of struggle in the early game. Those are also good candidates to be in the jungle. Another thing that I would recommend here, if you're going to be playing solo queue, is if you have the choice when you're going to go ahead and pick which path, I would say if you're not going to play jungle, try to absolutely get the top lane. Reason why you want the top lane, they'll talk about it later in the guide here, is come around 7 minutes, Dreadnought spawns, and your team should rotate from the top lane down to where Dreadnought is at the bottom of the map. And if you're in the top lane, you know that you're going to rotate down. If you have somebody else on your team in the top lane, who knows what they're going to do when Dreadnought spawns? But you know what you're going to do. So if you get top lane, at least one person's coming down rather than maybe no people, right? So always try to take top lane if you can. If you want to be stubborn about it, you could even go ahead and be like, I'm taking top lane no matter what, and then see if one of your teammates is like, fine, I'll go bottom lane. Because even though people might not like hearing that, you'll lose way more games sitting there trying to let the other person be happy if they already called top lane and then they don't rotate down. Instead of you going top lane, them grumbling for about, 5 seconds while they go down to the bottom lane, and then you end up rotating down to help your teammates at a critical moment. So that's my advice to get through solo queue, but let's keep moving on here. Although it is good to stay in your section, to really succeed in Pokemon Unite, you should also be flexible and ready to leave your designated area when needed, which is what I was just talking about. It's called rotating. You need to rotate in this game, and people don't do that a lot. So you know you will, but you don't know if your teammates will. If your teammates in another section, for example, have been knocked out, it could leave your goal zones unattended. Keep your eyes on the minimap, and if the situation calls for it, head over to an area where your presence would be more valuable. Just make sure to return when you've finished helping. Now, this part of the guide, I agree with rotating. I don't agree with their example, really, because it's a little confusing. So, if you're in the bottom lane, for example, and then one of your teammates gets knocked out in the top lane, don't go from your bottom lane all the way back up to the top because you're not going to get there in time to help an unattended goal. I would say this advice applies more to the center area, the jungler. If the jungler sees that the top lane's in trouble, maybe they can rotate up to help a little bit. But if you're in the bottom lane, don't go all the way to the top just to go ahead and help prevent a score because you're not going to get there in time anyway, and then that's just going to make your bottom lane a little bit more weak. So it's, if anything, it's going to be detrimental. So I think this is advice for the jungler more than switching lanes entirely. But we'll talk more about the nuance of rotating later in the guide here. So with that in mind, let's take a look at how a match breaks down. And this is where I really love this guide because there's a lot of numbers. So Ludicolo, Bouffalant, and Audino. Your first order of business when the match begins is to immediately start defeating wild Pokemon and earn EXP points and energy. In these early moments, your objective should be to level up your Pokemon quickly so that it can learn more powerful moves. And this is very subjective to the Pokemon, so more powerful moves start at different levels for different Pokemon. So Wigglytuff or Blissey, they get their moves earlier than most other Pokemon do. But then Pokemon like Gardevoir get their things way later. So pay attention to which Pokemon you're playing when you're talking about more powerful moves here. If the opportunity presents itself, be sure to periodically run that energy over to your opponent's goal zones to score. Energy doesn't help your team if you're just hanging on to it. Ooh, I love that. However, don't take any unnecessary risks. You may not want to get yourself tied up in a battle directly against your opponents at this point. Remember, your team wins in Pokemon Unite by scoring the most goals, not by defeating your opponent's Pokemon. Oh, I love that. Pretty much what this is saying is don't get red eyes, don't get bloodlust. People really, really like to chase the enemy team down and just want to get the most defeats, just want to get the most takedowns. And a lot of times it gets you in trouble more than it helps you. It can be nice to help you level up a little bit, but more often than not, I've seen greedy players lose an entire match because they just want to get another takedown rather than focusing on the goal, which is to score the most points. So, if you need to momentarily retreat, do so, and don't get too close to your opponent's goal zones unless you're sure you're not going to be knocked out. There's no shame in dealing a little damage with your moves and then backing off. Yeah, I like this a lot. Something I see a lot is people dive. Pretty much what they're saying is don't dive. Don't go too far into the enemy's area and then get yourself caught out of position. And this usually happens when you see an enemy that is low on health and you're like, oh, I can get him, I can get him, I can get him. And then suddenly they're on their zone, they're healing, and you can't get them. But you already committed too far, and then you get knocked out because you were diving. That's what that's called. It's called diving. And unless you know what you're doing, you're going to get yourself in trouble. At the 9:45 mark, Ludicolo and Bouffalant will appear in the central area. These two are tougher than the usual wild Pokemon, but in addition to experience points and energy, they will also reward you with special effects that make you more effective in battle. They both have strong attacks that you should do your best to avoid, but fortunately, they clearly telegraph these moves so you can move out of the way. Just watch out for the red bar that appears showing in the direction of their attack. So Bouffalant has a charge and then Ludicolo has a water gun. Ludicolo and Bouffalant will also respawn on the map 1 minute after they are defeated, giving multiple opportunities to boost your abilities. These Pokemon are worth a lot of experience points, so it's important that your teammates in the central area defeat them as often as possible. So that's good to know. So pretty much what they're trying to say here is 9:45 is when they spawn, and usually you'll be right next to them by the time they spawn. By the way, pro tip, Ludicolo always spawns closest to the jungler. I've never seen it happen any other way. So there's like two areas. There's a top and a bottom inside the central area, and Ludicolo spawns in one of them, and Bouffalant spawns in the other. And whichever one you're closest to is the one Ludicolo is going to spawn next to. Don't know why, just seems to work that way. So don't think too hard about where you got to go, because Ludicolo is always going to be right next to you. Also, what it's trying to say here is 9:45. So if you take both of them out by 9:30, well, maybe you should try getting back there by about 8:35 so that you can get there to take these two out again, because they give a lot of experience points, like more than any other Pokemon on the map. So you definitely want to pay attention to these guys. Keep eyes on your minimap to see when they show back up. And now that you know it's only a minute, you could be like, oh, well, maybe I could go back to my area, or I could go over to the opponent's area around that time and try to steal their stuff at that time, in case they're not as privy to this information. Stuff to think about. So here's where the buffs are. Defeating Ludicolo gives you a purple aura, and for a short time afterward, wild Pokemon you attack will take more damage when they're at low remaining HP. So this is why I think they always spawn Ludicolo next to you first, because it helps kind of snowball the rest of your jungling efforts. This makes it easier to defeat the more powerful wild Pokemon in the game, like Drednaw, Rotom, and Zapdos. When you defeat Bouffalant, your Pokemon will receive an orange aura. As long as that aura persists, hitting a Pokemon, either wild or a member of the opposing team, with an attack will cause that Pokemon's movement speed to decrease for a short period of time. If you find yourself caught in the battle with the other team, this buff will give you a great advantage. So, I mentioned other Pokemon that are really good in the central area other than the speedsters. Pokemon like Cinderace and also Greninja. A lot of Greninjas like to go to the center. And then with Greninja in particular, Greninja already has a slowing effect. So I would imagine that the orange aura comboed up with the slowing effect that Greninja has on his basic attacks would probably do a lot of wonders towards taking out enemy Pokemon really easily. When the clock reaches 9:40, Aipom and Corphish will appear on the top path, and Audino will appear on the bottom path. Audino don't provide any extra advantages like Ludicolo and Bouffalant, but they do grant more EXP points and energy than the smaller wild Pokemon like Aipom and Corphish, making them valuable targets between bouts with the opposing team. Remember that you'll only gain energy and EXP if you deal the blow that knocks out a wild Pokemon, so try to time your attacks carefully. Battles over the middle, Audino in the bottom path, and the middle Corphish in the top path can get especially heated, so be careful if you've selected a Pokemon that's not so hot early in the game. Ooh, okay. I got a lot to talk about in this paragraph. So, Pokemon that are not so hot in the early game. That includes Garchomp, not so hot in the early game. That includes Gardevoir, not so hot in the early game. Frankly, Scorbunny's average in the early game. Cinderace gets really, really good late, but Scorbunny's a little rough in the early game. But now Pokemon that are really good in the early game are things like a Lucario or Pikachu. Or, frankly, like a Wigglytuff and Slowbro get pretty good pretty quickly because they level up so quickly, or they evolve so quickly. And on that note, in terms of evolution, it says something up here where you'll only gain experience points if you hit the final blow. Now, that's kind of true. So you'll gain shared experience with your teammates if you help contribute to an enemy takedown or a wild Pokemon takedown, but you'll gain more if you're the one to hit the final hit. Also on that note, you will not evolve unless you get the final hit on a Pokemon, or if you score some goals. So if you're sitting there at level 3 and your Pokemon evolves at level 4, you need to get the final hit on something. So with that in mind, if you're on the team with a Jigglypuff and they're level 3 and you're Snorlax, make sure you let them level up by getting a final hit so that they can evolve into Wigglytuff at level 4. Snorlax doesn't evolve anyway, so that type of thing doesn't affect him. So if you know your Pokemon and you know when they evolve, keep that in mind so you can help your teammates evolve. Because if they're getting stuck and they just can't seem to get a final hit on anyone, help them out a little bit. Help them evolve so that you can help your whole team out. On to the next section here. Corphish, Vespiquen, and Combee. Moving into the second minute of the game, you should still be focusing on building up your Pokemon's level, and new opportunities begin to arise that will accelerate that progress. Right at the 9-minute mark, Corphish will spawn near the walls and the grass in the top and bottom paths. Yeah, we've talked about this in videos before. And then 10 seconds later, Vespiquen and their swarms of Combee will spawn in the top and bottom paths at 8:50. Yeah, so you get about 10 seconds to take out this Corphish, and you can get that done in 10 seconds, and then rotate over to the bees over here at 8:50. Like Audino, these Pokemon don't provide any extra benefits when defeated, but they'll give more EXP points and energy than the Aipom and Corphish, so make sure to make them a priority when going after wild Pokemon. Players in the central area may sometimes want to join their teammates on the top or bottom paths to help them secure these defeats. Okay, to help them secure these defeats. Read that carefully. Players in the central area may sometimes want to join their teammates on the top or bottom to help them secure these defeats. Not to steal them. If you're in the jungle, let the laners have their lane experience. Don't go up to the top or bottom lane and then steal all the bees and then go back to the central area. You get plenty of experience points in the jungle because, again, what we read before, Ludicolo and Bouffalant and all the other central Corphish, they will spawn at least twice before Dreadnought shows up. So you're at least going to get level 7 and potentially level 8 before Dreadnought shows up. So don't be stealing the bees, man. Also, if you're a jungler, don't hit my monkeys in the lane either. You're going to have your little pup and your Ludicolos and your Bouffalants. Don't touch my lane monkeys. You're not allowed to have them. They're my lane monkeys. You touch my lane monkeys, I'm going to touch your jungle buffaloes, okay? Either way, point being, if you're a jungler, don't steal from the lane because they also need to level up too. Okay? All 3 of these Pokemon eventually respawn after they've been defeated, so pay attention to the minimap to see when they return. Be aware, however, that wild Pokemon may not always respawn in the same location. Vespiquen and Combee, for instance, initially appear at the midpoint of their respective paths, but as you destroy opponent goal zones, they'll start to respawn closer to where those goal zones once stood. And actually, something on this note. So, it says that the Combees will start to spawn a little bit farther down in the lane, but something else happens too. So let's say you're going up against the enemy team and they push your zone back. A couple of things happen. One, you're going to lose your berries in that zone. And by the way, berries take about 40 seconds to respawn and they give you about 1500 health. Unless you're Snorlax, he gets more. And then, since your zone's pushed back, another thing happens. Audinos, maybe I've been saying it wrong this whole time. Audinos will start to spawn along the fence line. And those Audinos give you an opportunity to catch back up at experience points. Because typically, if your zone gets pushed back, that means the enemy is probably doing better than you are. So those Audinos give you a little bit of a comeback mechanic to get some more EXP points so that you don't get completely overleveled later in the game. Make sure you pay attention to that. That's a really good opportunity to catch back up. So on to the next area, continue scoring goals. At this point in the battle, you should be comfortably in your groove, defeating wild Pokemon, leveling up experience points, collecting energy, and scoring goals. Be careful about unnecessary altercations with the opposing team when you can. If you find yourself overwhelmed, don't be afraid to retreat to your side of the map and grab a citrus berry to restore your HP and chill out in one of your goal zones. Especially, I like this, especially if it's been a while since you last saw the opposing Pokemon that started in their central area. So, I really like that they brought this up. So, you should start to get an idea of what the jungler is on their team. So it's usually going to be a speedster, but pay attention to which Pokemon it is. And you'll see them go up into the top lane sometimes and go into the bottom lane sometimes. The reason they do that is to try to, what they call gank the enemy team, or to gank the team so that they can get an easy takedown. So pay attention to where they've been and what they've been doing, because if they're in a lane, in the bottom lane, and you're in the top lane, well, you know that they're down there, so you don't have to worry about them coming to get you. But if you haven't seen them for a while, chances are they might show up and try to, outflank you. So make sure you pay attention to where that 5th Pokemon is, because you see 2 in the bottom and 2 in the top. That 5th one is looming somewhere, and he might be looming near you. Remember, Pokemon sit in the tall grass, so be careful, he might jump on you. It's better to make a tactical retreat than to be knocked out, as that causes you to drop some of your energy you're carrying, which can be picked up by your opponents, and removes you from the action for a while, as you have to wait to revive back at your base. Also, I can't believe it doesn't mention this, it gives the enemy team some experience points, so you don't want to feed them. That's called feeding. If you go ahead and you make mistakes that make the enemy team benefit off of your mistakes, that's called feeding. You don't want to feed the enemy team. Feed their levels, make it so they're over leveled at the end of the game. And actually, on that note, something that happens a lot in Pokemon Unite is one team's doing really well and they get greedy and then they dive too far, and then the team that's losing is able to take out a few of these Pokemon that dove too far, and then suddenly they're able to catch up and level really quickly. I see so many games get turned around because the winning team gets greedy and pushes too far. If you're doing well, back off a little bit. Make them continue to do bad. Don't give them an opportunity. All right, now Dreadnought and Rotom. I love the advice they have in the Dreadnought and Rotom section. Both Dreadnought and Rotom will appear on the map at the 7-minute mark. 7-minute mark. Pay attention. Make sure you're there by 7 minutes. Don't be like, oh, 7 minutes, let me mosey on down. Make sure you're there by 7 minutes, preferably a little bit sooner so you can get the jump on the enemy team, because getting the first hit is a big deal. Anyway, these Pokemon can drastically affect the course of the game, so it's smart to have a coordinated plan for how to deal with them. They both appear at the midpoint between the two teams' bases, so start expecting some more direct confrontation with your opponents as you assail these Pokemon. Rotom's in the top lane, Dreadnought's in the bottom lane. Dreadnought appears at the center of the bottom path, while Rotom awaits at the center of the top path. Okay, that's what I just said. Of the two, Dreadnought should be your primary target. Oh, thank you, Pokemon! Yes, yes, yes! So much so that it can be worthwhile for all of the teammates to cover it. That means all 5 of you! You know how frustrating it is when you have 4 people at Dreadnought and your enemy team has 5, and then you have like a Greninja on the top lane just sitting there trying to get turn-ins of like 5 or 6 energy, and they're like, yeah, look at me, I'm doing all these points over here. No! Go to Dreadnought! God! Alright, let's see here. Defeating Dreadnought provides everyone on your team with a shield that will absorb damage for a while, and, perhaps more importantly, grants your team a significant amount of experience points that go a long way towards making your team more powerful. which can turn the tide in your favor as the match continues. And to provide a little bit more nuance with that, reason why, especially the first Dreadnought, is such a big deal is the first Dreadnought usually gets a lot of the Pokemon up to level 9 or 10. And level 9 or 10 is when most Pokemon get their Unite move. So if your team gets the first Dreadnought, you get all your Unite moves before the enemy team does, which means that you're going to win more team battles because you have an extremely powerful move that the enemy team doesn't have. Also, you're over leveled, which gives you a stat advantage. Each level improves your stats by about 7% HP, 7% attack, and about 12% defense. So those numbers become a really, really big deal in team fights, on top of the fact you'll also have your Unite move. So that, again, that allows you to snowball for the rest of the match and then keep a lead and keep doing well the whole game. So Dreadnought's a really big deal, especially the first one. Once Dreadnought has been defeated, a couple of members of your team will probably want to move up to the map and focus on Rotom. When you defeat Rotom, it will begin moving toward the opposing goal zone. If it reaches the goal safely, your team gets a quick 20 points. The goal zone will also become defenseless for a short period of time, allowing you to score goals instantly. Now, I have a whole video on Rotom that provides a lot more detail than this little paragraph here, including how to bump Rotom out of lane, including some of the things that happen with the defenseless goal zone. So I'll have that linked in the description down below, but some other cool facts about the defenseless goal zones. When it means defenseless, it means you could score instantly on it, but it also means that that zone no longer is providing healing or shields. So that's a really good time to push the enemy team, is when Rotom is making the goal defenseless. So keep that in mind. Both Dreadnought and Rotom will reappear on the map 2 minutes after they've been defeated, giving your team another chance to improve its standing. Be aware they'll leave the map at the 2-minute mark when Zapdos arrives on the battlefield. So you can get technically up to 3 Rotoms and up to 3 Dreadnoughts per game. Now, there's a lot of drama surrounding the final Dreadnought, or the Dreadnought right before the 2-minute mark, because for some reason in the game, I'm surprised they didn't mention it here, or maybe I'm not surprised. Maybe it's a bug, maybe it's not. But something that's currently happening, at this point on August 27th, 2021, if you defeat Dreadnought, Dreadnought reduces the amount of damage your team does to Zapdos by like 45% or 55%, like basically half. And that debuff lasts for 90 seconds. Now I have a video on that and how to get rid of that debuff. You can use full heals or safeguard or Wigglytuff's ult. You can get rid of the debuff, but doing half damage to Zapdos is a really, really big debuff. And again, 90 seconds. If you defeat the final Dreadnought at like 210, you're not going to start doing full damage to Zapdos again until like, I don't know, 40 seconds left in the game. So be careful with that final Dreadnought. He's a little weird right now. It might change. They might fix some stuff, but he's a little awkward right now for some reason, and we don't really know why. And again, I have a whole video on that if you want to see what that looks like. It cannot be stressed enough how important Dreadnought can be to the final outcome. The experience points that it provides can give your team a huge level advantage that could benefit you for the remainder of the match. Remember that the team that lands the final attack on Dreadnought and Rotom gains the benefit, so don't let your opponents sneak in and steal your hard work. Saving your moves until these wild Pokemon are low on HP are a good way to make sure your team delivers the finishing blow. And this is the biggest pain point, I think, at Pokemon Unite, is people don't like the stealing. Again, this is August 27th, 2021. I would not be surprised that in the future, if they make it so that you take out Rotom, or you take out Dreadnought, or you take out Zapdos, and then like a little platform will spawn, and then you have to stand on that platform uninterrupted for like 2 seconds, and then you'll secure it. I would not be surprised if they end up adding something like that into the game to help make kill stealing a little less frustrating. Anyway, setting yourself up for victory, 6 minutes to 2 minutes. Once Dreadnought and Rotom begin spawning on the battlefield, not much else new happens until Zapdos appears at the 2-minute mark. That doesn't mean you can relax, though. Your actions during these few minutes can prove pivotal for the match result. Spend this time setting up yourself victory before the big encounter with the legendary Pokemon. This means building up your level, scoring as many points as you can, and making sure your Pokemon is at full health, ideally armed with a Unite move, and ready to battle when Zapdos appears. So, some things to know about getting your Unite move ready. If you take out a wild Pokemon, you get 4% towards your Unite move, and that could be an Apom, and that could be Zapdos. Like, they all provide 4% for some reason. Scoring will typically get you about 10%, and that means scoring 1 energy, or that can mean scoring 50 energy. So scoring a bunch of separate goals really quickly can be a really good way to get your Unite move charged up really quickly. And again, it's typically 10%. Cinderace is like 8%. Wigglytuff, I'm not sure gets any off of it. It's different per Pokemon, but typically it's 10% per goal scored. All right, not per energy scored, but per goal. So every time you go through the whole action of the animation to score, that's when you'll get your energy. Same thing with the items where your attack weight gets a little bit stronger or your special attack specs get a little bit stronger. It's per action of scoring, not per energy. Hope I beat that into your head enough there. If you happen to get knocked out or forced to retreat, note that at the 5-minute mark, a super jump springboard appears right outside your base. Stepping on this lets you quickly get your Pokemon back into the fray by launching it to a target area of your choosing. If your opponents are approaching one of your goal zones, the super jump springboard can toss you right into the middle of the action, giving you an opportunity to disrupt their scoring. Seconds count in Pokemon Unite, so if you find yourself back at the base, take advantage of this tool. So a couple extra things here. If you use this springboard and hit your goal zone, if the enemy is trying to score, it'll interrupt their score. But there's a big nuance there. If they're using the score shield, it won't interrupt them. All right? So pay attention if they have a score shield on. Score shields make it so the springboard does not interrupt them while they're trying to score. So you might have to also quickly do damage to try to knock their score shield off of them. Also, if you're forced to retreat, don't be afraid to retreat, man. Don't get too, I need to be in the battle. If your health is low, don't be afraid to go back and heal and then just run back to the lane real quick. Oftentimes, you'll be more useful to your team by retreating and coming back with full health rather than sticking around when you have low health, because that just makes you an easy target. As you battle during this time frame, remember to be flexible with your actions. Use creative thinking to determine what you can do to best benefit your team and to set yourself up to be in an advantageous position during the final 2 minutes of the match. The best players take note of the minimap, so that they can be aware of what their teammates and what their opponents are doing at all times, adjusting their strategy to react to the current situation. Yeah, pay attention to your minimap. That's such a big deal. Like, frankly, in any game, whoever pays attention to the minimap is usually the ones that do well. That could be like Call of Duty, or that could be Pokemon Unite. It's every game that has a minimap, the players that pay attention to it tend to do the best. Now on to Big Bird here, Zapdos, and I have a lot of thoughts on Zapdos. So I'm curious to see what they say about him here. When the countdown timer reaches 2 minutes, be prepared for 2 dramatic twists in the match. First, all goals scored from this point on will be worth double points. Second, Zapdos appears in the center of the map. Combined, these 2 events can fill the final moments of every match with a frenzied action and threaten even the biggest of leads. This is also when you see the work you put in the previous 8 minutes pay off. If your team built a lead, they'll have a much better shot at winning the crucial fight over Zapdos. Again, I'm really curious to see what they say here, because I have the opinion that a lot of people in the Pokemon Unite community don't think about Zapdos in the most advantageous way, and I'm curious to see what they say here. Defeating Zapdos is a difficult task that will usually require multiple teammates to accomplish. If your team happens to be trailing behind towards the end of the match, though, it can be worth the effort. Just be aware of positioning of your opponents. Yes, you need, like, again, this is where the minimap really kicks in. There's 5 Pokemon on the enemy team. Make sure you know where they are, especially come Zapdos time, because if they're sniping, or if you're afraid of your Zapdos getting sniped, well, if you know where they are, you don't got to worry about it. If you know your opponents are close by, they're sure to attack you while you're trying to defeat Zapdos, so it may be wiser to engage them first. Yep. When Zapdos is defeated, the player that landed the final attack gets 30 energy, and their teammates will also get 20 energy each. Now, I'm not sure if you get that 20 energy if you're currently, respawning, but everybody who's alive will. Somebody let me know in the comments down below if the Pokemon that are respawning, if they also get that 20 energy. These points will still need to be scored in one of the opponent's goal zones, but you'll be aided by a 30-second window during which your opponent's goal zones will be defenseless, so similar to how Rotom works, allowing your team to instantly score goals. When you combine this with the fact that scored goals are worth double points during the final 2 minutes of a match, securing a victory over Zapdos can really turn the match around. Perhaps counterintuitively, if your team is in the lead when Zapdos appears, it may be beneficial not to attack it. After all, your opponents will be the ones who need the points offered by Zapdos, forcing them to abandon their primary routines and then go after the legendary Pokemon. This will draw them to Zapdos' enclosure in the central area of the map, where your team can lie in wait to ambush them. And if they don't go after Zapdos, or if you think your team is ahead and Zapdos has already been defeated, you may want to fall back on playing defensively instead, by standing your ground near your base's super jump springboard so you can easily leap across the map to each of the opposing zones when the opportunity presents itself. Yeah, so pretty much what they said here is a really good way to defend. I talked about this in my Zapdos video. I have a Zapdos video. I talked about this where if you sit in your home zone on the springboard, you can either go top or bottom, depending on where you're most needed. And then if you have a zone that was never defeated way out, back where the berries are, you can sit on that zone and then kind of fake going back to your home area. And that'll allow you to go back to the springboard if you need to, or to also sit on the far out zone that you're trying to defend. Again, the Zapdos video will do a better job explaining that if you want to go check that out. While your opponents are preoccupied with battling Zapdos and some of your teammates, your other teammates can continue to score points. Ooh, I don't like this advice. Okay, while your opponents are preoccupied with battling Zapdos and some of your teammates, your other teammates can continue to score points on the opponent's now unguarded goal zones. If your opponents happen to defeat Zapdos, you should focus on knocking them out before you reach the goal zones or holding them off for 30 seconds until your goal zones are no longer defenseless. Remember, all that work to defeat Zapdos only pays off if the winning team can score their points. Okay, so I like some of this. So the part that I really like is if you lose Zapdos, don't give up. You just have to take them out. Now, a few things happen when you lose Zapdos. One, they get a bunch of points, your goals become defenseless, and also you get zapped by Zapdos. So that hurts. But make sure you don't give up, because if you can take out the enemy team, even after they got Zapdos, well, they can't score if they're defeated. So make sure you try to take them out as quickly as you can, or try to slow them down, or do something. But now, looking down here, I think they're going to talk a little bit about what you should be doing with Zapdos, and I'm going to give you my opinion on Zapdos, because I really think a lot of people don't understand how to take advantage of Zapdos while they're in the lead. So we're going to talk about that. And now, actually, yeah, there was a part of this paragraph that I did not like, and it's this idea where you separate. When it comes Zapdos time, you should all be together, working together. If somebody's sneaking off to go ahead and try to score points on your goal, honestly, that's a good thing for you, because that means that their team is not working together. That means they're separated, and it's easy for your whole team together to pounce like a death ball. I do not agree at all with the notion of splitting up come Zapdos time. If you're in the lead or if you're not in the lead, you should be together to dominate that center area. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about that after we're done with these paragraphs. Like with Dreadnought and Rotom, the team that lands the final attack gains the benefit, so take advantage of that to steal the moment from the opposition. Saving a Unite move until Zapdos is nearly out of HP is a good way to get that last hit in. If your team is struggling during the last few minutes of the game, make sure Zapdos is your top priority. It's kind of a gambit necessary to get back on top. Just be aware that all these previously mentioned strategies will now likely be used against you. Take note of where the opposing enemy team is, get your hits in on Zapdos. You will, of course, have a much easier time of things if you spent the rest of the match raising your levels. And then this is the final paragraph here saying, follows the clock, yada yada yada, make sure you do everything we said. So now let me talk about Zapdos and how to handle him if you have a lead, because I feel like a lot of people don't do this correctly, and everybody gets different ideas of how to handle Zapdos, that everybody splits up and nobody works together, and that's how you lose. So how to handle Zapdos, in my opinion, come the final 2 minutes, if you have the lead. If you have the lead, there's a few things going against you. Typically, you'll have more goal zones that could be scored on, right? You might still have 4 that could be scored on, while the enemy team only has their home zone left, right? So that opens up a lot of opportunities for come 2 minutes for the enemy team to suddenly score 100 points on you. And then even if you had more points during the first 8 minutes, those double points can catch up in no time at all. So there's more areas where they can go ahead and poke holes in your defense, right? Also, the enemy team will respawn faster if they're a lower level than you in the final 2 minutes. So that gives them multiple opportunities to keep coming back at you. So if you have 2 minutes and they can respawn like 3 times, that means you're going to have to win like 3 different team fights, which can be hard to do. Winning 3 team fights in a row it's not something I would bet that you're going to do. You could lose one of those team fights, and then the enemy team knows that they're losing, so they will all work together to pounce on Zapdos, right? In my opinion, protecting your lead means making it so the enemy team can't score. That does not mean just not attacking Zapdos. A lot of people think that if you have the lead, that you shouldn't attack Zapdos. This is my opinion, but I very much so disagree with that. It can make sense to not attack Zapdos. There's plenty of times where it makes sense to not attack Zapdos, but there's also a lot of times where it makes sense to attack Zapdos. Reasons being things I just mentioned. You have a lot of holes in your defense that allow them to catch up to you. And then you also have to deal with multiple waves of the enemy team in case you just keep defeating them and then keep defending Zapdos. In my opinion, what you should do if you have a lead is make it so they can't score. And what that would mean is if you win a team fight in the middle, which you're probably going to if you have a lead, take out like 2 or 3 of them, right? At that point, everybody on your team, all 5 of you, should pounce on Zapdos. Because you only have 2 Pokemon on the enemy team that you have to worry about. So it'll be easy to find them. Check the grass, check top, bottom, side. See if there's anybody waiting around to try and snipe Zapdos. And if you find them, zone them out. And if for whatever reason you're taking down Zapdos and they manage to get a snipe in, there's only 2 of them on their team probably if you defeated the other 3. So they're easy to grab, they're easy to take down. If there's still 5 of you left and there's only 2 of them, chase them down and get them. And then go ahead and defend because you already had the lead anyway. That way they don't get an advantage. Don't give them an opportunity to get Zapdos. They can't get Zapdos if you get them. So, again, I see way too often teams are winning and they lose because they get too passive and they get way too indecisive and they don't work together. And some people think they got to defend. Some people think they got to go after Zapdos. Some people think that they got to go ahead and attack the enemy Pokemon. And that indecision and that indecisiveness loses games. And that's why the enemy team, when they're losing, can all pounce on Zapdos together and win. And by the way, Garchomp can take down Zapdos by himself in like 24 seconds. If you get your whole team working together, you can melt Zapdos in less than 10 seconds. I'd say 8 seconds. Whoosh, gone. The team doesn't... If everybody's working together, the enemy team doesn't even have time to react. So I really hope people start to understand that protecting your lead means protecting your lead. It does not mean making sure Zapdos doesn't die. I hope this helps, and I hope you learned a couple of things about Pokemon Unite here. We also have a whole channel dedicated to Pokemon Unite. It's called Pokemon Unite Guides, links in the description. It's brand new. I started it this week, and we're almost at 1,000 subscribers, which is awesome. So go on over there, get there first. You'll get bragging rights. And also, we stream every single night, twitch.tv/SwingPoynt. We've been streaming a lot of Pokemon Unite. I'd love to see you guys over there. If you guys have any questions or advice or things you want to see me play over on the stream, that's a great opportunity to get in on that. And with that, again, I hope this helped. I hope you learned a thing or two. And thank you guys so much for being here. You guys are awesome, and I'll see you in the next video that we do around here.